Welcome back. It is our almost final segment of what's the
Yes.
show we're doing?
What's that? The Cougar Chronicle?
Cougar Chronicle,
Cougar
exactly.
Chronicle, of course.
And it's the December edition, and it's so good to be here during this time of light. You know, whatever holiday you're celebrating, it's good to be here.
It's always fun to be with family and friends.
It is.
We look at things.
And our wonderful friend who we love, I love.
As always, Mr. Michael Bessette, our Assistant Superintendent.
Yes.
Back for another segment.
I know.
And really, when we talking topics, this is kind of a topic that you drove a little bit.
Well, you know, it's funny. So, you know, we jokingly say, you know, Mrs. James, Laura goes to her meetings in my jammies, right?
Yeah.
All the board meetings. Well, I was in my jammies last meeting, and I heard a lot about legislation, some of which I understood, and honestly, some of it I was surprised by. So, Michael, what's going on? What's help me understand.
She does that lately. Can you sum that up in 30 words or less?
Yeah. You have 2
Sum up the
minutes.
total of human knowledge in about 30 seconds?
The answer to
Sure,
life
absolutely.
and
I
everything.
think he's a chat
42.
GPT bot. Yeah, no. But seriously, there were some things mentioned, and I guess the general question is, there's a lot of legislation coming through.
Yeah.
So how do we make sense of it and sort through it?
So, you know, you have to slow down,
Okay.
you have to listen,
Okay.
and you have to pay attention. And you know, and if you're really going to try to understand what happens in the state of New Hampshire, you have to realize the ground that you are on in New Hampshire is kind of unique, and that's why it's been a target over the years for certain groups throughout the country to kind of come to this state to try to make sure that they can get a hold of certain political perspectives or drives or needs or whatever it is, because our House is, you know, it's larger than some of the governments of some countries around this world by far, right? So, you know, with 400 plus members of, you know, in the House of Representatives, Senate, and the governor in the structure, LSRs come, you know, fast and furious every single year. A LSR, or a legislative service request, is the, you know, the action that is filed by our representatives to bring legislation forward in our state. And at last count that I knew of, it was in the 180 to 200 LSRs that were brought forward just targeting public education. So. Yes. I want you to, if you think about that for a second, as an industry, if you will, or as a service, there aren't many industries or services in New Hampshire that have more legislative attention than education. House Ed has 2, not 1, 2 committees. House Education, its general committee, and then House Education, the Finance Committee, which work together to divvy up the load of the 180.
Split, like 2024, is that?
So they did it last year.
There was a place where it was one education committee, and then all of a sudden they realized that they couldn't get enough done. So you think about that. So then the group goes, oh, there's too much coming down the line. So
split it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, with politics being politics, it takes on a political edge, and you know, things get voted down in those committees around those LSRs down party lines. I mean, it's a rare occurrence where you really have great discussion and great listening and great debate at that table. It's usually a party line discussion, unfortunately, which is kind of the degradation of all of our politics in many ways throughout our country and even in our state. But you know, as we take a look at some of those LSRs that are out there, within different organizations, the school board has an organization, the special education administrators have an association, school administrators have an association, right? So each of those associations have groups of individuals or individuals working within them that look at that body of LSRs, and then they put stars on them, if you will, and they track them through using software like Fast Democracy or others to kind of really watch the trajectory of some of these LSRs and where they're making their way through, so that over time, if testimony is necessary or if advocacy is necessary, where you work as a superintendent working with a local rep, Hope Damon, for example, in our area might do it, David Luno in Hopkinton. By having those sit-downs with those reps, you can sometimes move board members to them to get information that helps to support quality decision-making at the table if people are willing to engage in that discussion, right?
And we have good reps who usually are
We're very fortunate.
Very responsive, very willing to listen. And even we've got a great number of reps. Really, they may not necessarily agree with everything we do, but we really have got a group that's willing to sit down and
even
have
at the
that
transfer station.
conversation.
Right. They see Karen and grab her. Right.
So, but that's not always the case, because the committee brings forward the LSR, and sometimes then the House has to act on it, or the Senate committee will bring it forward, and then the Senate has to act on it, and then it has crossover, and then a bunch of other things. But The honest answer to this is that there's so many LSRs and so many things that are coming forward to try to regulate how change happens based on a variety of different needs, whether it's financial implications or whether it's more moral implications. And these days, people will try to sell you an idea that a moral change or a moral requirement for an LSR is something, when in reality it's probably more a wolf in sheep's clothing that's dedicated towards a financial change, right? Because people don't like the tax bills.
How do you figure that out though,
Right?
John? I mean, I don't know how you get any work done with that. I mean, you could spend all day looking at
It's
these
really
LSRs.
hard.
Well, and that's why we have groups that we trust, that we take in information. And we also have to take into account that some of those groups are going to have a slight or a spin
A bias,
to them or
okay.
a bias to things because of where they're coming from. You look at the Superintendent's Association group, that is central office administrators. Obviously, there's some insulation on and a desire of things that they want to get done. And so that's why we don't just get information from one area.
Gotcha.
You know,
Okay.
Michael's done a
You
great
pull
job
it in.
really pulling it in from
Try
multiple
to give them a
spots.
balanced perspective. And it's a real trap sometimes because education in general wants to be perceived as being right-leaning or left-leaning or whatever leaning it's going to be, right? When in reality, we aspire to be very net neutral down the middle on most things, right? And student-focused. But what is student-focused for some isn't always student-focused for others, right? You've got groups who just solely want us to think about things like reading and mathematics.
Right.
They don't want us to teach things about history or about certain elements of art or health or social emotional well-being or whatever, right?
Yes.
Because each time you do that, you either cross into that moral or cost-based argument for them, and it could be either or.
Interesting.
Our big problem, though, is that when we go into these moments as a board, as a superintendent, as an educator, whatever it is, they tend to use a shotgun approach to a scalpel problem. When you write LSRs, now what does that mean? Governor Ayotte, for example, vetoed a bill that was brought forward by the House and the Senate on obscene materials. I happen to testify against that bill. Interestingly, when I testified on behalf of the district about that bill, I testified in opposition to that. Not because I think that we should have pornographic material sitting on our library shelves.
No.
That's not the case. Because when you look at the issue of obscenity, it's a very challenging thing. The Vitruvian Man, when you're looking at the poster of the Vitruvian Man, because when Da Vinci depicted the Vitruvian Man as what he is, a male, has genitalia. To some, when you put an LSR forward and you turn around and say that there can't be any nudity because any perception of nudity at all within any type of art or any type of class that a public school offers, something that restrictive, and that language matters, that becomes pornographic materials to some. Right?
Gotcha.
And so there has to be it's a challenge to find instructional materials that comport themselves in a manner that really aligns with what you need to do to teach properly the kids the things they need to be 21st century citizens, right? Whether that's health or art or physics or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. When you have people with very narrow competing interests who want to do good things, I would not aspire to say that the people who write that law are out there to beat people down with sticks. That's not it.
Right.
No.
They don't realize that the road to hell is sometimes paved with good intentions.
Right.
And so they create this language that becomes incredibly restrictive, prohibits us to do the work that we need to do with kids to help widen their experience and to give them a robust education. Because quite frankly, they're seeing this little tree within a very much larger forest.
Michael, what was the response? Just a quick 30 seconds, because I know it's a little off point here, but when you gave your testimony, do they respond or ask questions?
So yeah, they tend to actually. They're very respectful. The majority of them.
Yeah.
There are a few out there who just want to dismiss you because when you come to testify as a school official or administrator, you're pigeonholed into being a political character for them, right? And they don't always want to see you as being that neutral. They want you to be perceived as being something that you're not. That said, the majority of them do want to know the answers. The question is have they already made the decision at the table? And unfortunately, our culture in politics in New Hampshire has moved away over the years from listening to what the people at the table are truly talking about and the problems and the complexities of the things that they're trying to do in order to follow a very much a party line decision. it's a challenge, right?
It is a challenge.
And a lot of what we have to go into is going into strategy mode. So when we see, we've reached a point now, and he'll correct me, we get wind of something that could
Right.
have a very negative impact if passed. And rather than, let's wait and see if it passes, by the history of things here in New Hampshire, we have to go in strategy mode to try to
Right.
see how do we mitigate the negative impact. So we're, not only are we dealing with the daily operations of the district and moving everything forward at the status quo, but also
Right.
putting a plan in place and a lot of time and effort into, because things don't come in cleanly. There are bills that,
Yeah.
that come in late in the year.
Layered
There are
and-
bills that
yes.
come in the middle of the year. And so, and there's some stuff that's immediate.
And then, God forbid, 20 years ago, I was testifying before, the House, and it was all set to on a mental health issue, suicide.
Yeah.
And I got there, and before I could even do my testimony, and the other people with me, we had someone, one of the legislators say, no, we don't need to do this today. So your month of preparation going into this very important event is just, so it's hard, it's challenging, isn't it?
It is, but New Hampshire's a unique place. I mean, it's going back to science terms, it's not homogeneous, I should say. It is completely spread out all over the place. So your
I know
North
what you mean.
Country
I know what you mean. Yeah.
has different needs and different capacities
Right.
than the Southern Tier does, right?
Absolutely.
So when you
Even
write
within
a
a district sometimes,
very
right? I mean,
different
and then
state.
forget
Yeah.
the state.
Well, yeah, just
You
within the
know?
changes of the 7 towns
Yeah.
within our district, we see
Right.
the same kind of thing.
And then you go from Berlin to Nashua, and we're looking at different needs.
Right. So when you write legislation that's supposed to be uniformly applied against the North Country as against the Southern Tier,
Right.
it doesn't always make sense. And that's where the beauty, I think, of New Hampshire has always been in the local control discussions that people like to tout. And they say, we have local control. Well, we do until it really irritates somebody, right?
Gotcha.
And then what happens is that somebody then in an environment like the political environment that we have gets aligned with a political agenda. They move that agenda forward, and they want to remove the local control of communities because they're in disagreement with that local control. They follow the process, and they are sometimes very successful in doing that. Yeah. There are concerns right now about consolidation of superintendent services and how our districts are going to play out in LSRs. There's one in particular that wants to consolidate down to, I think it's a total of 16. 2 separate ones, one for Nashua, one for Manchester, and then I think 14 remainders that are spread out by county. And so it becomes, they've been having this trend to move towards elected officials. So last year they attempted to say that school boards are partisan, and that got vetoed by the governor. And now the latest attempt is to say that superintendent services, because they've gotten rid of the call for a superintendent in general in New Hampshire, they've said you can, as a school board, now hire superintendent services. Mm-hmm. And that was actually based on a good thing. It was based on the idea that North Country couldn't get superintendents up north to fulfill the needs of districts because people weren't moving up there and they weren't incentivized to be up there. So it was really challenging for them. So they took some of the labels off and said you can hire, if you choose to, local control, superintendent services for your region up there, school board. Go ahead and hire that if you want, but stick with a traditional superintendent if you also choose to. Now they're taking it another step forward, and what they're trying to say now is we're overbloated with administrative costs, right? Our superintendents and assistant superintendents and principals, we make way too much money for the time that we work in our schools or whatever it is, and we can save you money by consolidating all of your county into one regional county elected official, like a sheriff, who acts as the superintendent service provider for everybody within that group, and then transfer all of those responsibilities to principals or school board members, which at its face, the road to hell is paved with good intention, right? Yeah. Will that save money? Go to Maine. Take a look at what the RSUs happened in Maine. Look at Vermont. Look at how it fell apart in Vermont. But people don't want to perceive what's happened in other places. They just want to save money because our property taxes are so high.
Okay, now the good news is our producers are jumping up and down saying we gave you the minute signal 5 minutes ago, which is keeping me from getting, it makes my palms sweat. Because I see the responsibilities that everyone has here, namely my superintendent, assistant superintendent, and I can't imagine having those positions, consolidated into one. Anyway, so we won't comment a lot on that. But see, this is why we go to school board meetings. I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
So thank you,
We
Michael.
need to know about these things.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I appreciate it. Whew, my goodness, big way to end the year here.
Yeah. But it's important. I mean, these things have these LSRs become bills that become legislation that have an impact on our
student
students,
learning.
which are going to impact families and impact communities. It's ground up.
Now, I do a little light. I wish you and your family a
Thank you.
wonderful,
Same to
wonderful,
yours.
joyous holiday season. We
so much.
appreciate you so much being here. Thank you for that. So before I comment anymore, I think we're going to end the segment. What do you think?
I think we got to move on to our Ask the Superintendent thing before our producers
Absolutely, yes.
go crazy. So.
Exactly. Well, we'll be back on the next segment of
Cougar Chronicles.